Hi, everybody. I just wanted to touch base with you as we're kind of ending up or wrapping up week 4, Tuesday night at midnight. I just wanted to go through kind of where we've been, where we're at this week, and where we're going, and then give you a little bit better understanding of the timeline, the Gantt chart, and also the cost template. Some of you had questions, and so I want to give you an opportunity to kind of watch the video and then have an opportunity to go through and make any edits that you might want to make tonight or tomorrow before you submit the templates. So I just want to keep reminding you about these knowledge areas that are in the methodology. When we're reading Versa does a really good job of saying, here's the concepts, the templates, if you will, here's the knowledge areas, here's how to fill everything out. And they do a really good job of saying why. You know, this is why you need to create a proposal, why you need to manage your stakeholders, why you need to analyze them, why you need a charter, you know, why do you need a scope of work on your statement of work, why do you need a good budget, a good portfolio fit. And they do a really good job of that. There are multiple kind of methodologies, if you will, for project management. And one of them is PMBOK, and they have 10 knowledge areas. The knowledge areas that we have here are those that are listed in the Versa book. So they don't quite match up to PMBOK if you're familiar with that type of project management method. So remember that this chart is in your resources that you have at the top of Moodle. And we go through kind of an initiating and defining stage of the project. We begin to do some more, you know, all the planning to make sure that we can execute it, control it, and monitor it. And then when we're done, we close it out. So each one of these steps is very critical to the success of your project. You've already been through the proposal and telling your sponsor why they feel they should choose your project if there are limited resources. You've analyzed your stakeholders, and you've kind of created that statement of work. And so before you filled out a charter, you know, saying this is who the project manager is, and we want you to cooperate with them. But before that charter goes out, we have some additional planning that we need to do. And you did some of that before in week 3. You did some risk management, kind of assessing risks before they happen. So you're trying to be very proactive rather than being reactive. Then you kind of went through a work breakdown structure. What is it that was going to take those major scope activities, kind of stretch it out like an accordion, if you will, and list out every step from A to Z? Every single task that you have to do to be able to complete that project. And for your assignment, you turned in a work package assignment where you took one of those tasks and expounded on it, broke it out into who's responsible for it, what are the costs for it, what are the labor hours, those types of things. Now in week 4, you're working on your timeline or your Gantt chart, making sure that taking those scope of activities and laying them out in a timeline with a schedule so that you can control and monitor your project when you're executing it. The other thing that you're going to be doing is filling out a cost management plan. And you're basically planning for cost issues and items and vendor issues and those types of things. So this is a lot more literary than it is numeric. I mean, you're definitely writing processes and policy versus just simply dropping in cost data. And then as we begin to execute and control and monitor next week in week 5, you'll work on communication, quality, and human resources. And you'll have an opportunity where each of you will kind of not grade, but give the other feedback on things that they did well and things that they could continue to add to these templates or these tools. And then in week 6, we'll close out the project. So I always want you to keep these knowledge areas in mind as we move through the project management cycle. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to week 4, and you will be turning in a time template and cost. I talked with Ty Allen, and he gave me permission to use his work breakdown structure. Now, this is his work breakdown structure based on a renovation project. And what he did was he took each area and broke it down. Here's the kitchen, and he broke it down into the design, demolition, preparation, installation, etc. He goes on into some other project pieces with a bedroom addition. So in the kitchen portion of it, if we're just even looking at design and demolition, you can see that he broke down every, the design and the demolition into actionable steps. And that's what you would have done last week in order to get to your work assignment. You would have had to break out your scope of activities into each of the individual tasks. And then you took one of these work packages and you broke it out and kind of took a deep dive into it. How much are the labor hours, etc. And so if you have this work breakdown structure already, this is what will, literally be dropped into your timeline or your Gantt chart, which is right here. Here's the kitchen and the design, and then here's every step that is a part of that design process. What you're doing with your action plan or your timeline and schedule overview is you are associating dates and timelines with this. The first part of the spreadsheet is going to be about who it's assigned to, what their expected start is and their expected finish, the expected labor, etc. You can come back later then and fill out anything, that you feel is important that actually happened then. Here's when we actually started. Here's when we actually finished. Here was the actual labor instead of the estimate. You can think of baseline as estimate. And the reason that you do this is to kind of manage and control the project additionally as you move throughout the rest of it, but also to look at future projects and see, am I estimating correctly? Am I calculating the time correctly? And then you'll move into assigning dates for each of these tasks and how long they'll take. This task is going to take a day. Not this is realistic. This is just for an example. This task is going to take 2 days, 1 day, 3 days, 1 day, 2 days, etc. And so when you get done, you're going to have an entire timeline that is a schedule overview for your project. And this is what you're going to turn in for week 4 for your time, your action plan. The other one is a cost template. And this template is meant to really just kind of lay out what your process and procedures are. So you're going to list your company name, address, project name. Now these are just definitions. You're not doing anything on these introductory pages. This is just telling you that a project cost management plan that you're filling out is a component of project management plan that describes how costs will be planned, structured, and controlled. This is a policy in the form of a management plan, if you will. Here's where you'll log every time you make a revision to it, when you release it, and who you release it to. If I released it to these 2 individuals on such and such a date. If you make any amendments, you'll put it in the amendment section. You'll let us know who approved it and when between the project manager and the sponsor. And then here is the table of contents, and you start down at the cost management approach. So what you do then is you write in here, you introduce your policies, etc. I can't spell today. Introduce your policies, procedure, and any documentation for planning, managing, expending, and controlling. This is all processes and policies control. Then you go down into how you want to estimate your costs. What are your monetary resources that are needed to complete the project activities? And then explain, this is the literary part. Explain the procedures. This is the process part. What is the basis of your cost estimation? And provide information about how accurate the estimate is, What were the units that were measured, etc. You can use an activity cost estimation worksheet, but we haven't covered it in this course. So I don't expect this to be perfect. The idea is we want you to try so that you can begin to understand what some of these different templates look like, even if we don't have an opportunity to cover every single type of template that you might use in project management. So just do your best. That's what we're asking. And then lay out, the whole picture of the estimated cost of all the individual activities in your work package. So, you're going to lay out, you can literally take your timeline that we talked about before. I'm going to take it off of here because it's a little cleaner. And you might lay out, we'll see if this comes into Word okay. You might lay out, how much these individual pieces are in your scope of work. And define, how you're going to control that and provide information on how contingency and management reserves are taken into consideration. Define funding requirements. So anything that pertains to your costs, you will also put in this cost baseline. Now here we're explaining how cost will be measured throughout the project life cycle. I apologize, it's been a long day already. If the approach is earned value management, then explain the metrics. So that again, there's a piece there that is going to be outside of the scope of this course. So what we're really asking you to do is do your best, explain, how costs will be measured throughout the project life cycle, and don't worry about getting into some of the quantifiers and some of these other worksheets. Just try to basically fill out what you believe will be a policy and procedure or process to follow that will drive the cost estimates. How will your managers handle change orders? Let's say we're on a construction project. What if your vendor quits? How will you handle a new hire for a vendor? How will you handle making sure that you have an appropriate process in place if you have change orders, and who will approve those change orders, because these are all budget increases. So these are important policies and procedures to put into place. I don't expect you to be, if you're not already project managers, that's not what we're expecting from you here. We just want you to try to fill out these processes and procedures and get used to the feel of this type of a template. This particular template is in PMBOK, and so it'll feel like you haven't quite had a lot of exposure to this, but there are explicit definitions. So you'll be able to follow those. Cost reporting, provide information on the format and frequency of cost reporting. How often will you do it? How often will you report to the sponsor? How often will you report to the stakeholders? What are some of the triggers of cost overruns? And any options of preventative action. This is really critical. This is a policy and processes issue. But what's going to trigger it? If let's say you have a change order that goes over, $600 maybe, or $1,000. It depends on what your threshold is. But one of your triggers is going to be costs that run over the $1,000 limit that we put on there. And if that's the case, which was probably it was either not effectively estimated initially, or if there have been some change orders since, how are you going to handle that? And what are some things that you can do to prevent that? Are you going to check in with your vendors, halfway through their tasks to see, how far am I into completion? Where's my budget at right now? And am I going to come in on budget? And those are things that are preventable. And so that's, again, the purpose of going through this entire exercise is being able to plan, manage, be proactive. How will changes to the cost be controlled and approved? So basically, how are change orders going to be handled? Who do they have to go through? Again, this is process and policy. And then if you have any attachments that you want to add, which you won't, we're not really attaching our vendor costs and those types of things. So there's only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 pages where you're kind of answering questions on this template about process and procedure. So if you have any other questions about this template, I know it might feel a little foreign. Just try to work your way through it, see how it goes. It's about exposing you to this additional template. And then I'll send out a video for week 5 as we begin to execute, monitor, and control our project. And we have our peers look at our templates for human resources, communications, and quality. And then you'll start working on your reflection papers that you'll be turning in week 6. Remember that this reflection paper, if you look at your syllabus, and if you look at remember that important stamp I said, if you see this is where you really need to read something if you're just kind of skimming over things. But your role reflection will be written in a more business professional writing style. So I'm not grading APA. You're not citing your sources. It's a business professional writing style that you might provide to a supervisor or somebody when you are reflecting on what it is that you're doing. And it can be more personal. APA is third person. This can be first person writing. And so it gives you an opportunity to kind of get out of the academic mold for a minute and do something that's more personable and is a true reflection on what you feel based on your current position and role, what you might do differently in the future, and then also your personal approach to leadership and project management in diverse settings. And so you'll answer these questions in that paper and not be concerned with APA formatting, citing, etc. So I hope you guys have a great week. We'll look at everything that's coming back in for week 4, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we can kind of work one-on-one. Take care and have a great week.